The president of Ukraine has taken sick leave in the middle of his country's crisis. The presidential website states President Viktor Yanukovych is suffering an acute respiratory illness and high fever. There was no indication of how long he might be on leave or whether he would be able to do any work to end the 2 months of protests against him. And of course, this all comes as Ukrainian experts warn the country is on the brink of civil war. Our senior international reporter, George Thomas, is on the scene in the capital of Kiev.
Ukraine's prime minister has resigned. So too has the cabinet. But talk with many of the tens of thousands of protesters on the streets of Kiev. They will tell you this is not enough.
We are demanding the resignation of the parliament, of the president, for snap presidential and parliament elections to take place.
This is ground zero, the epicenter, the battlefield for the opposition forces. You see, for more than 2 months, tens of thousands of people have gathered in downtown Kiev, demanding that the president of Ukraine step down. The crisis started last November after Russia's president got the president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, to refuse a major trade deal and closer ties with the European Union for closer relations with Russia instead. So you think that Russia is trying to force... Michael Chernikov is an analyst in Kiev. He says from Kremlin's perspective, Russia has no borders.
Russia thinks Ukraine is still part of their territory, part of their empire, so they were more than happy to help bail out Ukraine.
But it wasn't what many Ukrainians wanted, so they took to the streets by the thousands. The protests have since morphed into demands for human rights, less corruption, more democracy, and an end to the government's authoritarian policies.
People see the policies of President Yanukovych as a symbol of everything that is wrong with our country, so they want new leadership, a new direction.
Earlier this month, Yanukovych pushed through new laws to crack down on protests, but the laws were abruptly repealed this week after violent clashes between police and protesters. Ukraine was once part of the Soviet Union until its independence in 1991. Home to roughly 45 million people, the country is split between pro-European regions in the west and pro-Russian areas in the east. Some fear the crisis could spark a civil war between the two regions. On Tuesday, thousands of pro-government supporters took to the streets of Kiev.
We don't want a split in the country, a civil war, because during a civil war there are no winners. We just need to sit down and talk.
George Thomas, CBN News.